The morning my marriage officially ended, Seattle woke up beneath a blanket of cold rain. It felt fitting. The gray sky looked exactly how I felt inside. I stood outside the courthouse holding a cardboard box with everything that was left of 22 years of marriage. A few framed photographs, some old drafting tools, a coffee mug with a faded company logo, and the navy blue notebook I'd forgotten was tucked beneath everything else. Vanessa stepped onto the courthouse stairs wearing a cream-colored coat I'd bought her for our 20th anniversary. She looked polished, confident, almost relieved. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She smiled. Her attorney shook her hand before walking toward the parking lot. Mine simply wished me luck. Luck. That word almost made me laugh. Vanessa looked at me one last time. I hope you figure things out, Ethan. I stared at her. She glanced at the cardboard box in my arms. I took what the court said was mine. Then she added the sentence that echoed in my head for years. You'll never recover from this. She climbed into her SUV and drove away. I watched the taillights disappear into the rain until they blended with the traffic. Only then did I realize I wasn't watching my wife leave. I was watching the life I'd spent more than half my adulthood building disappear around the corner. The apartment I moved into was barely 600 square feet. The refrigerator rattled all night. The heater only worked when it felt like cooperating. The windows overlooked an alley where delivery trucks arrived before sunrise. Every sound reminded me that I had gone from designing luxury homes to wondering whether I could afford decent groceries. Friends called during the first few weeks. Then fewer did. People rarely know what to say after divorce. Eventually they stopped trying. My parents had passed years earlier. My younger brother lived across the country with his own family. Most evenings, silence became my loudest companion. One rainy Saturday I began unpacking the last box. Most of it belonged in the trash. Old receipts. Instruction manuals. Expired warranties. Then I found the blue notebook. Its corners were bent. Coffee stains covered the front. Inside were hundreds of sketches. Small homes. Modular floor plans. Energy-efficient neighborhoods. Affordable housing concepts. I smiled for the first time in months. Every page reminded me of late nights sitting at our kitchen table after Vanessa had gone to bed. Back then I'd dreamed about designing neighborhoods ordinary families could actually afford. Whenever I talked about those ideas, Vanessa would roll her eyes. Nobody gets rich building cheap houses. Eventually I stopped mentioning them. Not because I agreed. Because arguing became exhausting. I spent the next several evenings reading every page. Some ideas were rough. Others surprised even me. I'd forgotten how much hope I'd poured into those sketches. The notebook didn't remind me of what I'd lost. It reminded me of who I'd been before I started measuring my worth by promotions, mortgages, and other people's approval. Monday morning, I walked into the architecture firm where I'd worked for nearly 18 years. My manager closed the office door behind me. Ethan. His expression told me everything before he spoke. Our biggest client pulled their projects. He slid a folder across the desk. The company has to reduce staff. I nodded slowly. I understand. You've always been one of the best architects I've worked with. That somehow made hearing the rest even harder. We're eliminating your position. I packed my desk for the second time in a month. This time there wasn't even a cardboard box. Just a backpack. As I rode the elevator down, I caught my reflection in the polished metal doors. 47 years old. Divorced. Unemployed. Almost broke. I wondered whether Vanessa had been right. Maybe I wouldn't recover. For several weeks I applied everywhere. Some companies wanted younger architects. Others wanted specialists in software I'd never used. A few never replied at all. Each rejection chipped away at whatever confidence I had left. One afternoon I stopped at a neighborhood coffee shop because it was warmer than my apartment. I spread the notebook across the table, adding notes to an old floor plan. A woman carrying a laptop paused beside me. "Did you design that?" I looked up. She wore work boots, a rain jacket, and had a tape measure clipped to her belt. I nodded. "Years ago." She studied the drawing carefully. "This ventilation system is clever." I smiled politely. "Thank you. I'm Olivia." "Ethan." She introduced herself as a structural engineer working on community housing projects. We talked for nearly an hour. Not about my divorce. Not about losing my job. About design. Materials. Neighborhoods. Families. Ideas. For the first time in what felt like forever, someone wasn't looking at me with sympathy. She looked at me with curiosity. Before leaving, she handed me a business card. "My contractor is always searching for architects who still care about people." I slipped the card into my notebook. "I appreciate that." "No," she said with a grin. "I think someday you'll appreciate it." At the time, I had no idea how right she was. That simple conversation would become the first step toward rebuilding not just my career but my entire life. The following Monday, I called the number on Olivia's business card. She answered on the second ring. "I was hoping you'd call." That sentence alone gave me more confidence than I'd felt in months. 2 days later, she introduced me to Ben Morales, a contractor who specialized in restoring older homes and building small community projects. Ben didn't waste time. "You've got talent," he said after flipping through my notebook. "But talent doesn't pay invoices." I laughed. "I've learned that the hard way." He slid the notebook back toward me. "Show me you can build one of these." It wasn't a dream contract. It was a detached garage conversion for a retired schoolteacher. The budget was tiny. The deadlines were tight. But when I walked onto that construction site, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before my divorce. Purpose. Every morning I arrived before the crew. Every evening I left after everyone else. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was trying to prove to myself that Vanessa had been wrong. When Mrs. Henderson walked into her finished guest house, tears filled her eyes. I never imagined it could feel like home. She hugged me before I could respond. That hug meant more than the paycheck. Mrs. Henderson told her neighbors. Her neighbors told friends. Friends told family. Slowly, my phone started ringing. Not constantly. Just enough to keep going. Months turned into a year. The apartment still rattled every night, but I didn't mind anymore. It wasn't a symbol of failure. It was a temporary stop on the road somewhere better. Olivia and I began working together regularly. She challenged my ideas. Improved my designs. Questioned every shortcut. I appreciated that. Real trust isn't built by agreeing on everything. It's built by knowing someone wants the best outcome. One evening she asked me a question no one else had. Why affordable housing? I looked down at the notebook. When I was a kid, my parents almost lost our house twice. She stayed quiet. My dad worked 2 jobs. My mom cleaned offices at night. They weren't lazy. They were just one emergency away from losing everything. I paused. I remember promising myself that if I ever became an architect, I'd build homes regular people could actually afford. She smiled. Then let's do it. Those 3 words changed the direction of my career. We formed a small design company. At first, it was just the 2 of us working from a rented office above an auto repair shop. The ceiling leaked whenever it rained. The furniture came from thrift stores. Our conference table had once been a dining table. We didn't care. Every dollar went back into the business. Some months we barely paid ourselves. Other months we wondered if we'd make payroll after hiring our first employee. Success didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived through consistency. One satisfied client. One recommendation. One completed project. Again and again. Then everything changed. A massive wildfire destroyed hundreds of homes in a mountain community east of Seattle. Watching families stand in front of burned foundations broke my heart. Children held stuffed animals covered in ash. Parents stared at empty lots where birthdays, holidays, and ordinary Tuesday dinners had once happened. I drove home that evening and opened the blue notebook. Page after page contained modular housing concepts I'd sketched years earlier. Fast to build. Energy efficient. Affordable. The ideas Vanessa had once called impossible. Olivia looked over my shoulder. We can do this. It'll take investors. We'll find them. It'll take permits. We'll get them. It'll take months. She smiled. Then we'd better start tomorrow. For the next year, we barely slept. We met with city officials. Non-profit organizations. Banks. Construction companies. Volunteers. Some people rejected us. Others believed immediately. Eventually, one county approved our pilot project. 32 homes. Then 60. Then more than 100. National media noticed. They weren't interested because the houses looked flashy. They were interested because families could finally afford them. Our company grew faster than either of us imagined. We hired architects who had once struggled just like I had. Young designers. Veterans. Single parents returning to work. People who needed someone to believe in them. Every new employee reminded me of the man carrying a cardboard box outside the courthouse. 6 years after my divorce, I stood on a stage accepting a national award for innovation in affordable housing. The applause echoed through the ballroom. I looked down at the audience. Olivia smiled from the front row. Ben gave me a thumbs up. I thought about my parents. I wished they could have seen that moment. Then I remembered something else. The blue notebook. Without it, none of this would have happened. A week later, my assistant knocked on my office door. There's someone here asking for you. Who is it? She hesitated. Vanessa. For a second, I simply stared. Then I nodded. Send her in. She looked different. Older. More tired. Not because of age. Because life had finally caught up with her. She smiled nervously. It's been a long time. It has. Her eyes wandered around the office. Photos of completed neighborhoods lined the walls. Children rode bicycles in front of houses we designed. Families smiled on front porches. This is incredible, she whispered. Thank you. She looked down. I owe you an apology. I waited. I thought success meant having the biggest house, the nicest car, the right image. She swallowed. I spent years chasing all of it. And I lost almost everyone who actually mattered. Silence settled between us. I heard about your company. I nodded. I'm proud of what you've built. There was sincerity in her voice. For the first time in years, I believed it. I'm struggling, she admitted quietly. My business collapsed after the market changed. She looked embarrassed. I didn't come here expecting money. She hesitated. I just hoped, maybe we could talk. Years earlier, I would have wanted revenge. I would have wanted her to feel every ounce of pain I'd carried. But standing there, I realized something. I already had everything I'd been searching for. Not because I was successful. Because I was finally free. I forgive you. She looked surprised. I don't regret our marriage, I continued. It gave me lessons I couldn't have learned any other way. She wiped away tears. I don't think I deserve your kindness. Maybe not. I smiled gently. But forgiveness isn't earned. It's given. We talked for almost an hour. About life. About mistakes. About growing older. When she stood to leave, she stopped beside the door. You know. What? I really did take almost everything. I laughed softly. You missed one thing. The notebook. I nodded. She smiled through tears. I always hated that notebook. I know. It turns out. I looked toward the window overlooking another neighborhood under construction. It was the most valuable thing we ever owned. She left smiling. Not because we were getting back together. Because two people who had once hurt each other had finally made peace with the past. That evening, I drove home. Not to the apartment with the rattling refrigerator. To a modest home overlooking Puget Sound. Nothing extravagant. Just enough. The blue notebook still sat on my desk. Its pages were worn. The coffee stains remained. Sometimes visitors asked why I hadn't replaced it. I always smiled. Because that notebook wasn't just paper. It was proof that dreams ignored today can become someone else's hope tomorrow. The day my ex-wife took everything, I thought my life was over. Looking back now. It was finally beginning.